Before you listen, if you enjoy the stories and want to hear more, then please consider subscribing. Most of you listening aren't subscribed, so please take this time to subscribe. Turn on notifications so you'll never miss a story and be the first to hear. You'll also be supporting me. Thank you. We were off to Grandma's house like we did every summer. The thing about our visits to Grandma's house is that they were always full of anticipation. Even as the trip was long, it was one we all looked forward to. Grandma lived on the far side of the countryside, almost 200 miles away from our bustling city life. The drive was a journey in itself, a path winding through various worlds, from the clamor of urban life to the silent tranquility of rural serenity. It wasn't just a change in surroundings, it felt like a shift in time itself. Mom would start packing a day or two before the journey. The list of things to bring was always long. Grandma's favorite homemade cookies, hits we'd picked out over the past few months, and old photo albums that would give way to long, nostalgic conversations. My younger sister always insisted on bringing her army of stuffed animals. She'd sit in the backseat, creating elaborate stories with them, lost in her own world. Dad would meticulously check the car, making sure it was ready for the long drive. We'd set off in the morning with the sun smiling brightly overhead. The city would still be waking up, its streets slowly filling with the usual chaos. Buildings, people, cars, and buses would whiz by as we made our way out of the concrete jumbo. As we leave the city limits, suburban houses would replace the high-rise buildings, their neat lawns a stark contrast to the concrete we were accustomed to. I'd noticed headlights in the mirror, bright ones. They seemed to pop out of nowhere, and they were moving fast. We were out in the middle of nowhere, so it felt weird to see another car, let alone one that was in such a hurry. I tried not to worry about it. I tried to keep my eyes on the dark fields outside, but those headlights kept getting closer. I gave Dad a nudge and pointed at the mirror. He nodded and started to slow down. Figured we'd let the speedy car pass, but as we pulled onto the side of the road, the car behind us did the same. Now I was scared. What were they doing? Why didn't they just pass us? We pulled over to let the car pass, but they didn't. They pulled up right next to us. It was one of those big SUVs, black, like something out of a movie. It looked even scarier in the dark. The window of their car rolled down slowly. I could see people inside. I couldn't see their faces clearly, but I could tell there were many of them packed in the car. And they had guns. Not just one or two, but a bunch of them. Guns and other stuff that looked like weapons. It was like an army. I remember I couldn't even breathe properly because I was so scared. It was the longest minute of my life. I kept looking at them, then at my family, then back at them again. They just sat there staring at us. They didn't say anything. They didn't do anything. Just stared. And then, just like that, they rolled up their window and drove away. They left us there on the side of the road, scared and confused. But at least we were safe. They were gone. I remember feeling relieved but also worried. We all were. Nobody talked about it. Let them. We just sat there on the side of the road in our old station wagon, staring into the darkness. So after they drove away, we were just sitting there, stunned. We didn't know what to do or say. We just sat in silence, staring out into the darkness where they disappeared. I could still feel my heart racing and my hands were shaky. I looked at my sister. She was quiet, her stuffed animals clutched tightly in her arms. Dad was the first to move. He slowly started the car and got back onto the road. No one said anything for a long time. The usual joy of the road trip was gone. It was replaced with a thick silence that none of us dared to break. We drove for what felt like hours. I kept looking in the mirror, half expecting to see the headlights again. But the road behind us remained dark. The only sounds were the hum of the car engine and the faint music playing on the radio. When we finally saw the lights of Grandma's house in the distance, I felt a huge wave of relief wash over me. As we pulled into the driveway, Grandma was waiting for us on the porch, a big smile on her face. But her smile faded when she saw our faces. We were all still shaken up by what happened. The rest of the night was a blur. We unloaded the car and went inside. Grandma made us some hot cocoa and we sat in the living room, not really talking much. We all just needed some time to process what had happened. Things that can't be explained, things that leave you feeling shaken and wondering what if. So just three friends, me, Jake, and Kyle. Jake had recently inherited this old house in the middle of nowhere from his grandpa. It was the kind of house that could easily be the setting of a horror movie. Old, creaky, and isolated, but the idea of having a place of our own, where we could escape the city's constant buzz and hang out, was pretty exciting. One evening, we planned to drive down to Jake's place. We had the whole weekend ahead of us, full of plans for gaming, barbecuing, and perhaps a little exploration of the vast woods surrounding Jake's house. The house was about a 2-hour drive from our town, which was a long way, but we didn't mind. The journey was always a part of the fun. We left in the late afternoon with the sun slowly disappearing behind the city's skyline. The car was crammed with our stuff: bags, snacks, and gaming consoles. The city's hustle and bustle slowly gave way to the quiet, open countryside. We were chatting, laughing, and singing along to our favorite tunes, the atmosphere in the car a stark contrast to the serene landscape passing by outside. This one road we had to take was particularly deserted. It was a 2-lane highway, surrounded by vast fields with a scattering of trees here and there. There wasn't a single soul in sight, just us and the open road. The setting sun gave the landscape a strange, almost eerie glow. That's when I saw her. An old lady, frail and bent, slowly walking by the side of the road. She was all alone in the middle of nowhere. It was a strange sight, but we thought maybe she lived nearby. We passed her without giving it much thought. But a few minutes later, we saw her again. At least it looked like her. The same hunched posture, the same slow walk. We thought maybe we were seeing things. I mean, how could she have gotten ahead of us so quickly? We shrugged it off, rationalizing it as just a weird coincidence. But then it happened again, and again. Every few minutes, we would see her slowly walking by the side of the road. Each time the hair on the back of our necks would stand up, and we would break in a sweat. The chatter and laughter had now been replaced by an uneasy silence. Even our favorite songs could no longer drown out the fear that was slowly creeping up on us. We didn't stop. We didn't dare to. We just kept driving, praying that we'd reach Jake's house soon. But every mile seemed to stretch on forever. And every few minutes, there she was, the old lady, walking slowly. It was like she was stuck in a loop, and somehow we were stuck in it too. When Jake's house finally came into view, we all let out a sigh of relief. We didn't speak of what happened. Not right away. We unloaded the car, grabbed some food, and tried to act like everything was normal. But the image of the old lady was etched into our minds, and it cast a shadow over our otherwise fun-filled weekend. The next day, we finally talked about it. We tried to make sense of what we had seen. We thought of every possible explanation. A prank, a hallucination. Maybe there were multiple old ladies who looked alike living in that area. But deep down, we all knew that what we had experienced was beyond any logical explanation. To this day, we still talk about that night. The story of the old lady has become a staple of our gatherings, a spooky tale we share around the campfire. We had many adventures since then, but none as unsettling as the night we drove down that deserted road. Despite the fear and the mystery, it's an experience we wouldn't trade for anything. So it all started with me and my best pals, Sam, Alex, and Mike. We've known each other since we were kids, always hanging out together, doing the same things. We love playing video games, watching sports, and just fooling around. But one thing we all really enjoy is being outdoors. The idea of camping, hiking, and just being around nature gets us all excited. For a long time, we've been talking about going on this trip to a national park that's quite a few miles from our city. We heard so many things about it: the huge trees, the crazy wildlife, and those stunning views you only see in postcards. And being the adventurous dudes we are, we always wanted to check it out ourselves, especially Alex. That guy loves taking photos and wouldn't stop talking about the great shots you could get at the park. One afternoon, we were at our usual hangout, this burger joint we all love. As we were flipping through some travel magazines, we saw some photos of the park. We looked at each other, and without even saying a word, we knew it was time. Time to make our dream trip happen. We picked a date right there and then. It was about a month away, so we had enough time to prepare. We started making lists of things we needed to bring: tents, sleeping bags, a cooler for our snacks and drinks, and of course, Alex's camera gear. As the days rolled by, the excitement kept building. We couldn't wait to get on the road, to leave the city and its noise behind, and just be one with nature. We were constantly chatting about the trip, making plans, and imagining all the fun we'd have. Finally, the day arrived. We were up at the crack of dawn, loaded our stuff into Sam's old car. It's not much, but it's been with us through thick and thin. With the early morning sun shining down on us, we set off, the open road ahead, and an amazing adventure waiting for us. It was just perfect, 4 best friends on a trip we'd been dreaming about for years. We were cruising along the highway, singing our favorite songs at the top of our lungs, the wind in our hair, the city slowly fading behind us. We had the whole day ahead of us, and we were in no hurry. We laughed, joked, and talked about all the things we wanted to do once we reached the park. Little did we know the trip was going to take a weird turn, but more on that later. The road to the park was a straight drive through the city and a winding path through the most gorgeous landscapes you could imagine, rolling hills, lush green fields, and finally, thick, dense forest. Everything was going great until the weather decided to turn against us. From a bright sunny day, it suddenly became overcast, and then the rain started pouring. It wasn't just a slight drizzle, it was pouring like the sky was about to fall. Visibility dropped, the road became slippery, and we had to slow down. We pulled over at this rest stop to wait for the rain to ease. This place was barely holding together. A couple of rusty old picnic tables, a rundown restroom, and a signboard that looked like it hadn't been painted in decades. We stayed in the car, watching the rain lash against the windshield, hoping the weather would clear up soon. Just when we were about to start the car again, we saw this guy standing at the edge of the woods. Tall, lean, just standing there in the pouring rain, staring at us. It was a creepy sight, and we didn't hang around. Sam started the car, and we hit the road again. The rain kept getting worse, and the atmosphere inside the car had shifted. We were all a little on edge, and then, out of nowhere, we saw him again. The same guy standing on the side of the road, watching us. We drove past him, our hearts pounding. We had no clue how he had managed to get ahead of us, or why he was following us, but we didn't want to stick around to find out. We drove for what seemed like hours until we finally reached the park. The sight of the park's entrance sign was a relief. We quickly found a campsite, set up our tents, and tried to forget about the weird incidents on the road. The next few days were just as we had imagined, hiking through beautiful trails, cooking over campfires, and taking tons of pictures. We managed to push the memory of the creepy man to the back of our minds. But every now and then, when the shadows grew longer in the evenings, we couldn't help but remember his eerie stare. We made it back home safe, with tons of stories and unforgettable memories. But to this day, whenever we get together and talk about that trip, the memory of the man standing by the road in the pouring rain always comes up. It's a strange mix of fear and excitement. Thanks for listening in. If you like these stories and want to hear more, then please subscribe and like and support this new channel. We have more stories for you to listen to.